Hello, this is John with Theology Ed. This is part 17 of the iPet Go 2 Explained series. In this part, we're going to move from big picture analysis and looking at things like who are these characters and what's the goal of the ritual magic to more specific, smaller symbols and things that have representative meaning, symbolic meaning, or represent some events, things like that. And so we're going to dig deeper now. That foundation we laid, we're going to put it to use. So here we go. We're going to start today by reminding ourselves or reviewing very quickly the idea of the magician being sort of infinite within them in herself and having an infinite number of parts that correspond to reality outside herself. And if she's able to sort of leverage that and will things properly and get herself sort of made up right as the magician, she's able to actually affect change outside of herself in the real world. And she goes from microcosm to macrocosm, expanding gradually with power, sort of her influence, region by region, until we get to the highest level of the macrocosm, something like that. But the idea is that in iPet Go 2, we had repetition. So we had the real small scale representation of what she was trying to accomplish in her spell. That was on the board. Then we go out and we get it in the snowdrift and on the graffiti, the snowdrift and the graffiti, sort of expanding until finally we go out a little further and we have it in the clouds, the buck moon all the way up here in the sky, all the way over to where the eclipse, the red light coming from the sun, is off screen because it's just so big, and it keeps expanding, and we get these different views of this period that goes from the June 21st annular eclipse through the buck moon, the stag moon on July 4th, the night of July 4th into the morning of July 5th. Now, this calendar, of course, is 2020 calendar. If you followed my videos before, I've explained that in depth and at length, and it's not hard to see once you see what's going on here. We have January, yin yang, that is the new year, Chinese New Year this year, and it was in Barbar because China was under lockdown, but then February is not. In March, the World Health Organization declared a pandemic, global pandemic with the virus, and then the whole world more or less became locked down, and we had people unable to leave their homes for unnecessary activities and all sorts of things. And that was really tight in April, and it sort of loosened up after that. And we're headed towards June right now. We're about to enter June, and June is an interesting month because first it has this V up here. That's a Roman numeral for 5. The June full moon is an eclipse, a penumbral eclipse on June 5th, and it looks like the first month we really start to see injuries to the month. This month is actually a body cast. Then we move over and we have the eclipse during this month, which is highlighted throughout this video and comes up repeatedly in other predictive programming and ritual magic films, ceremonial ritual magic, these sorts of things. And then right after that, we go to the stag moon, or the buck moon, represented here by a male rabbit, which is a buck. And so that moon represents a point at which the calendar goes from relatively tranquil. Notice that the grass is normal and well organized and looks like you'd want it to look. And then to the right, you get wild vines and it just looks like a mess, a chaotic mess. The bunny is angry looking in this direction, and we have beaten heads, and we have locked down again tight. So it gets worse over here. And in July, we have the birth of Harpocrates. You can review all my old videos if you're new to the channel. That's all here. JK Bugout in a video just recently pointed out this is a rose, which represents June, which just confirms what we've already known, that we have June 20th to June 21st annular eclipse represented here. This is, in fact, happening in June. That was a really good observation of his, something I'd looked at and never figured out yet. So good on him. Really nice to have a lot of people working on this. So we have the year here, 2020, and the eclipse and the buck moon. And this is one representation of it. But I want to point out something on this calendar that we've skipped over so far. Look closely. Right by the bunny, to the left of the bunny, we have this nice outline here, everything going smooth, and we have a blemish of some form. It's either a pin holding it up, I'm not sure, or it looks like a bullet hole or something like that. Now, the whole bullet hole idea is warranted, and I'll show you that there's actually a gun later in the video shooting, and it shoots to this exact position just before the buck moon. And we will find there's repetition of this. 3 or 4 times at least so far, I have found that we are pinpointing something here, right before the buck moon. And I've been skipping over this, but now I think is a good time to go back to it, because this is, what's interesting about this is what we'll find when we see the repetition is this is not just an initiation of an activity. They actually show the strike. They actually show it hitting. So in this case, it hits whatever this is before the buck moon. We have a pin there, or a bullet hole, or something that indicates target there before the buck moon. And what I'll do now is I'm going to go on and I'm going to show you in other places that we have this as well. One place that we have this, of course, is outside the schoolroom in the snowdrift. We have the eclipse over here. I put her there to represent the eclipse. That light is there. Oh, here. Yeah. We have the sun represented by the light and the moon represented by the circle put directly underneath it, so that the eclipse is ending here. And then we have the 23rd, and then we have Neptune with the trident. That's the sign of Neptune. And retrograde represented with the R. There's your retrograde in the graffiti. That begins, Neptune stations retrograde on June 23rd. There's your 23rd, June 23rd. The still waters are not going to be still anymore, Psalm 23. Neptune, of course, is the god of the sea. He's Poseidon. And so he is god of storms, earthquakes, of the monsters of the sea that come out of the sea, like giant sharks, things like this. Okay? And so that's all related to Neptune. Here we have the trident in the snow representing the Neptune retrograde. So this is from the eclipse going this direction now. Of course, we have the doomsday clock back here going this direction. So June 23rd is right there. We go over, and here is our lunar south node. The buck moon, there's a penumbral eclipse, and it's a lunar south node eclipse. And this is the symbol of the lunar south node. This sort of looks like sort of a U, but curves in. Okay. Now, what do we have right before it? Here is your pin. Here's your target. And it is the flagpole. And the U.S. is torn in half here. Now, I have yet to figure out this light. I've not even mentioned it in the videos yet, but I'm always thinking about it, and it bothers me every time I see it because I've not figured it out yet. I've compared it to the Statue of Liberty torch, which is another very bright object. This is a very bright object. I think it's the brightest object in the entire video, and it lines up pretty well with this flagpole and is related, it looks like, to the Neptune retrograde. So maybe this is an indication that something blows under the water and causes whatever catastrophe this is. I have no clue. But think about that for me, because I've not been able to figure it out. I was waiting until I could give you a decent suggestion, but it's bothered me long enough. I'm going to mention it. There, look at that. That is a very bright light, and we haven't figured out what it is. And if you watch it with the sound and watch them backing up, the cameras were backing up, as soon as this enters the picture, the sound goes ding. It makes a sound when this shows up. And so this is important. And, try to think about it. I'm trying to look at it from different perspectives, and I don't know. But anyways, it seems important, and it seems to be related to either this timing and Neptune at the same time, or I'm not sure. Okay, but here we have a target for sure, and it goes into the snow at the exact same spot as our bunny has his wound, or has the hole next to him, right before him. Okay, so here's your buck moon on July 4th, 5th, that night. Right before it, you have a hit. Here's the buck moon. Right before it, you have a hit. This is splitting the U.S. Now, we have another case of this here. Very interesting case here. Now, of course, here is your red sunlight over here on this shark. So here's our shark and red sunlight. And we go this direction, and here is our moonlight. That's the buck moon. How do we know it's the buck moon and not some other moon? It's, of course, the white light. It's following our pattern like we'd expect it to. And here's your dark shadow from the Earth. Here is the moon just outside it. That is what happens during a penumbral eclipse, which is what's going to happen on July 5th, the buck moon. The penumbral eclipse is an eclipse where the moon is not in the direct shadow of the Earth, but is in the penumbra outside it. So here we are, and now look closely. This is a gun. right under the 23. Okay, remember in Egypt they have the ceremony, the ritual of the open mouth, they call it, when a person dies. And if you look closely, it looks like this nose, open mouth right here is going to eat an apple. I think that 6-like number that looks like the 6 with the 23 also looks like a round object with a stem. Looks like they're about to bite an apple here, maybe. Either way, it's just a possibility. We've been talking about this. One of the commenters before mentioned the apple and forbidden knowledge. Taking the forbidden knowledge here, taking a bite right out of it, possibly, not sure. But here you have your shark. Here, this is a gun. Here you have the handle. Here's your trigger. Here's your hammer. Here's the barrel. There is your front sight. Okay, you have a barrel of a gun, and it shoots this direction. And what's it going to hit? Right here. It creates this damaged spot. See the line? I made a perfectly straight line, made sure I stayed parallel with the barrel, and if you follow it over, it hits center in this damaged piece of island or ice. Now, if you look, that is just before the buck moon. So now we have a third thing hitting just before the buck moon. We've got a shot here. We have the target here. We have the spot there, the target there. We have now 3 repetitions of the video, something being fired at or striking just before the buck moon. Now, if we look out here, now this may seem like more of a stretch, but we've already got these other 3 witnesses that there's a strike or some other attack or firing happening before the buck moon, just before it seems like. And if you look here, here's your buck moon. Over here is the sun. That's the red light from the sunlight. And if you look at this bizarre cloud, look at it. Here it is. I zoomed in. We have a cloud with 2 lines coming out behind it. It looks to me like something firing. I'm not going to read too much into that, but when we put it with something else, it looks like a bullet flying, and they put these lines behind it like that's showing motion. If you look here, there's the motion. It's going that direction from the sun again towards the buck moon. I don't know where it hits or where it's going to hit, but it goes that way. And so maybe it's the thing that's going to hit here or hits your target for the 9/11. I have no clue. But the idea is that you have a firing in this direction. That's what it looks like. If that's correct, that would be 4 of our repetitions having something being fired in the direction of your buck moon attack, whatever it is, before, but hitting before the buck moon perhaps. But this only shows the fire. I don't see it actually hitting. The other 3, this is a shot of a gun that hits before the buck moon. This is a target before the buck moon. It's either the pin like on the map or it's a hole in the wall like a bullet hole. And it comes just before the rabbit. The rabbit seems to be untouched. It comes before the rabbit. This, or right almost touching the rabbit. Maybe it is barely touching the rabbit. But here you have the pin. It's like this is your pin, the flagpole, right before the lunar south node. And the U.S. splits. Plausible option, something small like this unrest, the civil unrest in the U.S. Continues to spread city by city by city. Maybe this is the day the military makes its first shot against the people. And that's sort of like the shot heard around the world that creates more and more problems over time. Because it does look, I mean, if you're trying to represent a huge catastrophe, you're, a little hole in the wall or something seems too little. Or this looks like a pea shooter shot over here and put a little hole here. It didn't destroy the island, didn't blow anything up. It looks simple, but it's the kind of thing that can begin big problems. Maybe it's in China that causes a war eventually. But with this Hong Kong situation, I'm not sure. But something seems to happen here before the buck moon or right before the buck moon, maybe on the 4th, maybe the 3rd, and it happens. And I don't want to pick dates, but I'm saying this is what they looks like they're planning for. If I'm just reading this and saying, why in the world do they have repeatedly shots or targets or pins right before the buck moon in the symbolism where we're going from microcosm to macrocosm? And the question I'd like to give the explanation, oh, it could be a lot longer after that, but here's the difficulty. We're seeing the strike. We're not just seeing the firing. It looks like the firing starts early, maybe from the 23rd or maybe just anywhere, but it's fired and there's a hit. Now, one possibility is that what we're looking at is something like a hurricane, right? This starts with the 23rd. Neptune is the station's retrograde the 23rd. And they may have plans to form a tropical storm or something out in the Atlantic or off the Gulf Coast, somewhere like that. And then it'll continue to go until it makes landfall. It's right here on the coast, right? This is the coast of the island. It hits around the beginning of July, right before the buck moon. Maybe that's the idea. Maybe what we're looking at is some sort of representation of that, because here we see it with the 23rd, which is Neptune station's retrograde, which gives you the water event stuff. And how else are you going to get something that fires and takes, almost a couple weeks to hit? That's the sort of thing that happens with a tropical storm that forms far out in the ocean. And we get, in the snowdrift, again, it seems to be associated with the Neptune stationing retrograde. If it's out here and goes in, I don't know. But in this scene, we also have, of course, your water issues, but I don't want to go too far there. But the idea is with the speculation on what it is, not positive. There are some ideas I have, but we definitely have target just before the buck moon at least 3 times, and a shot, it looks like, 4th time. Now, I want to take another issue, take up one more thing here. We also have in these scenes both a shark and the shot. We have that in the classroom. Here's your shark, and here's your shot, if you want to call it that. Your shark and your shot. Go outside here. Here are your big sharks. Here's your shot. Go to this scene, this one, actually, where you back up and you see it better. Here's your shark. Here's your shot. It looks like 2 things to me. No promises, but it looks like 2 things. Now, if we take a look at Madame Q again, but this time I'm going to show you what I think is going on here. I think Madame Q represents the June 21st in one respect, one layer meaning, represents June 21st through July 5th, through the buck moon. Now, J.K. Bugout had a really excellent observation the other day in a video, and I recommend looking at it. If you can see those videos, take a look at them. But you have here on her dress, you have these leaves, the skirt, you have these leaves, and the leaves are fig leaves. Okay, they're fig leaves. That's pretty clear when you make the comparison. So we have fig leaves on here. Matthew 24:32, we read this. In Matthew 24:32, we read this. Now learn a parable of the fig tree. When his branch is yet tender, and putteth forth leaves, ye know that summer is nigh. Summer solstice. In fact, if you look at the branches, they sort of look tender here, right? They look young and all of that. And here you have your leaves. Okay, this is your fig leaf evidence that you're at the summer solstice, roughly. So let's take this as the bottom part as June 21st. Okay, there's your summer solstice eclipse, June 20th, 21st. The solstice actually happens like 6 hours before the eclipse. Even the dates fall on different days depending on where you're at in the world, but it's very close. They call it solstice eclipse. So this solstice eclipse would mark the beginning. Now let's go to the top of her. If you look closely, she has in her hair a 7 and a Roman numeral 4. There it is, 7, 4, 7, 4. I think what they're depicting here is going from her skirt to her head upwards. You're going from June 21st through 7th through the buck moon. Okay, and you can see the 7 actually joins over there. So it is a 7. I think it's fair to say that. So we get 7, 4. Now, if we go from June 21st here to 7-4 at the top, what's in the middle? Why does she have areolas, he, she, right, have areolas that look like targets? And why is one breast so much larger than the other. One looks young and new, right? Younger, and it's not sagging, it's smaller. This one looks like it would be a saggier breast that's larger. Okay, so we have two breasts, different, one target and another target for areolas. Very interesting to have these two. And then with the eyes, if you look closely at her eyes, of course, it looks like people talk about latest bags in the eyes, but it looks like she has black eyes. That's really dark. It's like she got hit twice. So it's not just that there's two targets, but between June 21st and July 4th, it looks like there are two targets, and the whore, who represents, remember in our last video, represents both the United States and the Catholic Church, has a Whore of Babylon application. We saw that when Horus exits the church at the end. When the church is destroyed, we see that there's another yoni behind it that was even bigger, which is the city in the United States. Okay, representing the United States, or New York City at least, and they're both represented as the whore. So it's like a dual application. And here, there's two ways to hit her, two targets, two strikes between June 21st and July 4th, 5th, the buck moon. Okay. That's a possible interpretation. I'm not going to promise that, but that is a possible interpretation. And, this scene is a really rich scene as far as understanding them putting little hidden things in the writing or on the walls. It says Irma on the wall. J.K. Buggup pointed that out a few years ago when the 2017 Hurricane Irma came right after the eclipse. At that point, after the eclipse or after the alignment. So Irma was written in here. Now we have these dates indicated as well. We see we have a lot of things going on in this scene that I'm not even going to mention right now that are interesting. There's also, for example, I've mentioned that it looks like she's being violated here. If you look here, here's two legs, body leaning forward, hands as though it's going on her. If you imagine, look at that layout, her with him, and don't think of him as being far behind, this little stick figure guy being behind. Patria is one two-dimensional sort of surface, and him being with her. He's like leaning over her, like he's attacking. Okay, and so I think that's a confirmation we have violation. So there's a lot of little things like that going on in the scene. But right now, what I want to focus on is our targets. So she goes back. Now look, we have the large breast over here. That's the old saggy breast. That's an old saggy target that's bigger. And we have the new younger, if you want to call it that, target that's smaller on the right. And the blood points to it. Now this blood, I've mentioned it as probably being, because it's related to a violation, it could be a type of piercing of a hymen in a new sense. Not that she's an actual virgin, but she's a whore. You see all the little check marks back there for partners. But this is something different, what's going to happen, the destruction of the whore. That's one possibility. Could also be the menstruation when it ends. It's like the end of a cycle, the end of an era, the end of a period. Another possibility is that it's bloody show, right? Bloody show comes, goes quickly. It's not a whole lot of blood, and it's before delivery. And she's got her legs open. Maybe she's preparing to give birth. So there's different options. I'm not sure. But with the attack, this one at the end seems to be pointing to the younger breast, if you want to call it that. And if the USA and the Catholic Church are going to be compared, the Catholic Church has over 1 billion people. The USA is about 300 million. The Catholic Church is old. The United States is new. So again, it sort of looks like it's pointing to the U.S. as the U.S. target in this scene. Now, why is it in this part pointing to that? Is that the second target of the two? I'm not sure yet. So I'd like to hear what you think. But these are the kinds of ideas that I have right now, and I think we have a lot of room to build on and expand on. But that's what's going on, I think, here. I think we have two targets between June 21st and July 5th, the buck moon, July 4th, 5th buck moon. Two targets, two hits on the whore. And so that would tie into the US being the whore in the video. That would take us back to the flagpole target. That'll give us the pre-buck on the rabbit target, and perhaps something to do with a shot that starts on the 23rd and hits on in the beginning of July. So the best explanation of that, if that timeline lines up, is something like a hurricane forming or a storm forming that's going to hit the coast like here. All right, that's all I have for now. Let me know what you think. There's always room for improvements, and a lot of you make fantastic observations that I missed. So, throw them out there, and let's keep working on this together. Thanks a lot. Take care. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. Share it too if you can. Bye-bye.